whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
But I want to say one thing to the American people. I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people. Thank you.
We reform health care. We will keep this promise to the American people. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period. If you like your health care plan, you will be able to keep your health care plan.
We know with confidence, that the Ukrainians did not have such a system anywhere near the vicinity at that point in time. So it obviously points a very clear finger at the separatists.
In the days following the Malaysian Flight 17 attack, the Russian government released satellite photos that showed locations of Ukrainian Buk anti-aircraft missiles, and they also presented documentation that a Ukrainian fighter jet rapidly approached the Malaysian airline prior to its downing. The U.S. government was forced to concede that Russia was not directly involved in shooting down the plane.
The Assad regime, and only undeniably the Assad regime, unleashed an outrageous chemical attack against its own citizens.
And once again, Kerry was not able to back up these claims with evidence. And in fact, Syrian rebels actually admitted responsibility for the chemical weapons attack. Yes, those same Syrian rebels the U.S. government had been secretly aiding militarily.
And the White House promised more direct military support is on the way, but aides would not disclose the specifics of the arms the U.S. is sending.
And who can forget the package of lies delivered to the world about Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction?
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass death.
So I don't know where he is. Nor, I just don't spend that much time on him. I'll be honest with you.
Now, perhaps Bush just didn't want anyone to start questioning all the anomalies surrounding 9/11. Just one of many being the invisible plane that hit the Pentagon.
An eyewitness who said it appeared that Boeing 757, the American Airlines jet, landed short of the Pentagon. Can you give us any better idea of how much of the plane actually impacted the building?
It might have appeared that way, but from my close-up inspection, there's no evidence of a plane having crashed anywhere near the Pentagon.
They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor.
That was Nurse Nayirah, whose tearful testimony swung the pendulum in favor of war. After the vote was safely passed, Nayirah, the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to Washington, admitted to making the whole story up.
Does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly.
What I can say unequivocally is that if you are a U.S. person, the NSA cannot listen to your telephone calls, and the NSA cannot target your emails.
And have not.
And have not.
What happened in Benghazi was, in fact, initially a spontaneous reaction to what had just transpired hours before in Cairo.
However, U.S. military personnel knew early on that the Benghazi attack was a hostile action and not a result of a spontaneous protest triggered by an anti-Muslim video.
What difference at this point does it make?
2 years later, smoking gun emails were released, proving the administration worked immediately trying to spin the attack as something other than their own strategic failures.
I remember landing under sniper fire. There was supposed to be some kind of a greeting ceremony at the airport, but instead we just ran with our heads down to get into the vehicles to get to our base.
Problem is, that's not what happened. And we should know, CBS News accompanied the First Lady and daughter Chelsea on that Bosnia trip. That's Senator Clinton talking to me on the military flight into Tuzla. And these are the pictures we recorded of the greeting ceremony when the plane landed. Compare that to Senator Clinton's account.
I remember landing under sniper fire. There was no greeting ceremony, and we basically were told to run to our cars. Now that is what happened.
She meant that there was fire in the hillside around the area when we landed, which was the case.
Online in just the past few days, a reminder that in politics, memory should always match the videotape.
And we got in a vehicle, and the kid driving the thing felt like 100 miles an hour. I mean, we're bouncing along, charging along. Finally, I told the guy, I said, "Son, slow down. I mean, Al-Qaeda's not here. Al-Qaeda's not here. Al-Qaeda's not here." That's about as humorous a moment as the day. The decision was made to go to Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska. My question was who did it. The head of the CIA, George Tenet, believed it was Al-Qaeda. It had the earmarks of an Al-Qaeda attack. But Tenet wasn't that definitive yet. So my first indication it could be Al-Qaeda was during the National Security meeting at Offutt Air Force Base. So my first indication it could be Al-Qaeda was during the National Security meeting at Offutt Air Force Base. Al-Qaeda's not here. Al-Qaeda's not here. Al-Qaeda's not here.
This was one of the biggest political scandals in American history. Well,
the thing that's so appalling to me is that the president, when this whole idea was suggested to him, didn't in righteous indignation rise up and say, "Get out of here, you're in the office of the President of the United States. How can you talk about blackmail and bribery and keeping witnesses silent?"
In mid-1971, the Pentagon Papers were leaked. That report proved that administrations from Truman to Johnson had intentionally expanded their Vietnam War efforts, in contrast to what the public was told. The Nixon administration then panicked and formed a covert group to halt leaks. Nixon advisor John Ehrlichman assembled the White House plumbers and included former CIA agent E. Howard Hunt and former FBI agent G. Gordon Liddy. Soon, the president's political rivals were recorded on Nixon's enemies list. Politicians, journalists, and even Hollywood actors Nixon feared could stop his re-election were included and were harassed by the administration with tax audits, legal action, and more. Prior to the 1972 election, the Republicans created a Committee for the Re-election of the President, or CRP. John Mitchell stepped down as Attorney General to chair that committee. The CRP used questionable and illegal means to achieve their goal. For example, Mitchell kept a slush fund to subsidize information gathering on the Democrats. Ultimately, a plan was approved to bug and steal information from the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate Hotel. On June 17, 1972, during the second of these break-ins, the burglars were arrested.
The Democratic National Committee is trying to solve a spy mystery. It began before dawn Saturday when 5 intruders were captured by police inside the offices of the committee in Washington.
The FBI quickly linked those arrested with Hunt. Because of Hunt's connection to the plumbers, Nixon ordered his chief of staff, Bob Haldeman, to instruct the CIA to block further FBI investigation into the finances behind the Watergate break-in. The cover-up began.
Mr. Nixon, did you know about the burglary of our Democratic National Headquarters at the Watergate?
The Nixon administration then officially denied involvement in the burglary. However, more clues emerged that conflicted with this. Aside from the Hunt connection, one of the burglars was a Republican Party aide, and a paper trail led to the CRP. On June 20th, Washington Post journalists Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein reported on the Hunt connection, with confirmation from their anonymous source, Deep Throat. This team was instrumental in unraveling the Watergate case and in implicating the Justice Department, the FBI, the CIA, and the White House. Since to the scandal, Nixon was decisively re-elected that November. The burglars pleaded guilty before Hunt and Liddy went to trial in early '73. The scandal soon exploded when many of the administration's important figures were implicated. In April, 4 top Nixon aides lost their jobs due to their involvement in the cover-up: Haldeman, Ehrlichman, Attorney General Richard Kleindienst, and White House lawyer John Dean. Official investigations began in mid-1973, led by Senator Sam Ervin and Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox. They proved the connection between the burglary and the White House and CRP. Dean became a valuable witness when he divulged Nixon knew about the cover-up. In July, Nixon assistant Alexander Butterfield explosively revealed the existence of Nixon-installed recording devices throughout the White House. Those tapes were subpoenaed. However, Nixon refused to release them, citing executive privilege.
This principle of confidentiality of presidential conversations is at stake in the question of these tapes. I must and I shall oppose any efforts to destroy this principle, which is so vital to the conduct of this great office.
To save himself, Nixon dismissed the Attorney General, his deputy, and Cox in the Saturday Night Massacre. Public outcry followed, and Nixon responded with one of his most quoted speeches in November '73.
People have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
By March, the Watergate 7 were indicted. Many spent time in prison, and though Nixon was named, he remained unindicted. The Watergate tapes were finally released in July 1974. An 18-minute erased section proved controversial. Of the exposed facts, it was found that some involved in the break-in had received hush money. Most importantly, the smoking gun tape undeniably proved Nixon knew about the cover-up since mid-1972. Nixon was forced to step down or face impeachment. On August 8, 1974, Nixon resigned and was replaced by Gerald Ford. Exactly 1 month later, Ford officially pardoned him. This controversy resulted in multiple arrests, the creation of new laws, renewed interest in investigative journalism, and the first resignation of a U.S. president.